So I know that a lot of you find your way to this channel because you are looking to learn how to draw, but as a beginner it can be quite overwhelming, so I thought I'd make this video and lay out everything that you should know if you are starting to learn how to draw. I'm going to approach this as if you have minimum experience when it comes to drawing, and I'm also assuming that you are serious about improving your drawing ability, and you probably are, otherwise why would you be watching a video like this? Now when it comes to learning anything, it's helpful to understand why you want to do it. So in terms of drawing, what do you want to do with it? There's lots of reasons why you might want to do it, and it's worth asking yourself that question, because if you can somehow create some clarity around what it is that you want to achieve by learning how to draw and what you want to do with that skill, then you can start to plan in the right direction and figure out the path that you should take to learn how to draw. And my intention with this video is to assist you in doing that. You will be able to create almost like a filter and then work out what is suited to your needs. Otherwise you might waste a lot of time doing the wrong thing, and that's a mistake that a lot of beginners make. When you are not familiar with what's involved with learning how to draw, it's quite hard to judge what you should be doing. But that's kind of how a beginner looks at drawing. They think that as long as they are drawing, they are improving. And whilst there is a bit of truth to that, they are likely not going to improve as efficiently as they could be if they had an understanding of what they are doing and why they are doing it. And it might sound like I am dragging on a bit here, but it's really important to understand what your artistic goals are. And so let me give you a few examples. Now, every drawing is two-dimensional. It's drawn on a flat surface. But in those drawings we create the illusion of a three-dimensional space. And there's different ways of drawing, and these different ways require a certain amount of skill and knowledge. Not every skill is required to draw in a certain way, and neither is the amount of knowledge that you need to inform how you apply those skills. So what are these types of drawing? Well, we have drawing from observation and drawing from imagination. This is how I would categorize drawing, but within those there are subcategories. So I am going to go through each of these in their own video. I'll give some examples and I'll explain what's involved in terms of the skills and the knowledge that you need. So here in this video, let's start with drawing from observation. So an example would be drawing from a reference image, using an existing photograph, having that in front of you with the intention of recreating that image on paper. And this is how a lot of people start off drawing. They will find a photograph of something that they like, and then they will try and draw that. Now if this is what you want to do, then there isn't really much that you need to know. All of the information that you need is there in front of you in the photograph. And so your focus is on creating a drawing from observing what you are looking at. Of course, you might not be creating a complete duplicate of the photograph. You might be using it as a reference just to create a drawing in a stylistic way. I can't really speak for everybody's intentions, right, but that process of looking at a photograph and making informed decisions in your drawing as a result of what you observe is still the same. So there isn't really any underlying knowledge that is required to do this, because as I said, all of the information that you need is already there for you. But you do need some skills, and the more skillful you are at these things, the better the resulting drawing will be. And I will list these skills here. So an obvious one would be observational skills. The ability to look at something with a purpose and then apply what you perceive when you are drawing. An example would be when you are outlining a drawing maybe, and you are estimating the position of your lines. You want to try and get everything to be at the correct scale and in proportion, and so when you are looking at the photograph, you are trying to figure out where these outlines need to go. And then when you draw them on paper, you are making an informed judgment in terms of what you observed in that photograph. And this does take some skill, you know. I found that through experience it does become a little less challenging to be able to estimate where you should place your lines in response to what you observe in an image. If the photograph is at a different scale to your drawing, which it likely is if the photograph is on screen, then you will have to transform the scale of everything to suit the size of your drawing. On a side note, if you do struggle with this, then try printing out the photograph so that it's at the same size that you are drawing it at, or maybe use a grid. There's lots of different things that can assist you, but I believe that this is a skill which is developed more through repeated practice, like most skills, but with some skills there are additional and more efficient ways of doing that. Observational skills don't just mean that you can accurately judge the position of everything and the proportions in a drawing. It also means that you are able to see other things as well. So when it comes to photographs, there's lighting and shadows that you might want to make note of. There's the textures and the details that you will have to observe in order to reproduce. And this is where skills tend to merge, because you need to know how to apply what you observe when you are recreating all of these different elements in your drawing. So then you require some rendering skills in order to apply what you perceive through observing the photograph. How are you going to represent these textures in your drawing? You need an understanding of the equipment that you are using, and you need to be skilled at using it in order to render these textures correctly. And there's many different ways to do this. You know, this isn't a rendering tutorial or anything, but I do have quite a lot of them on the channel if you want to have a look at them. But I'm just sort of covering the skills that are required if you want to be able to look at a photograph and then draw it on paper. So to improve your rendering skills, you need to be experienced with the equipment that you are using, and if you are, then you need to know how to use it correctly in order to create these different results. So you can look at something in a photograph and then confidently decide on the best way to approach it, the techniques which are best suited for recreating that. And again, all of this will improve with consistent practice, the more familiar and experienced you become with the equipment that you are using. And so I suppose using the equipment that you do to draw is a skill in itself. If you pick something up that you haven't used before and you are not very familiar with it, then you are likely not going to be very confident and skilled at using it. And so I think those are the main requirements in terms of skills when it comes to drawing from photographs: observational skills and rendering skills. Like I said, all of the information that you need is right there in front of you, and so that reduces the amount of decisions that you need to make. So that's one example of observational drawing. Now, it doesn't mean that you are only working from photographs. When you are drawing something from life, you are still looking at something that is in front of you, but you are looking at it within a three-dimensional space. You know, it's not a two-dimensional flat projection like a photograph is, and so there is more to this, but the same skills are required. Now, the same skills are required, but they are not necessarily used in the same way. You know, you're not looking at something that has been placed on a flat surface like you are when you look at a photograph. Instead, you are tasked with doing that, translating what you observe in a three-dimensional space into a two-dimensional space. And so through that process, there is a lot more to consider. There is a real sense of depth and space, and that can be challenging to accurately represent in your drawing. Now, when we cover drawing from imagination, we will be covering a lot of things, and one thing you will hear me discuss is perspective. And what is it? Well, perspective in the graphic arts is an approximate representation, generally on a flat surface, of an image as it is seen by the eye. And that was straight off Wikipedia, but it sums it up pretty good. So again, this isn't a tutorial, this is just me discussing what is required when it comes to drawing, but I do have an ongoing series on perspective if you want to watch that. It's definitely one of, if not the most valuable fundamentals when it comes to drawing. And even if you have just a basic understanding of it, it will really benefit you. So getting back to what we was just talking about, why is this knowledge of perspective good to know when it comes to drawing from life? Well, like I said, we are dealing with space, and the only way to accurately represent three-dimensional space on a two-dimensional surface like paper is through using perspective. And you've likely been doing this when you draw from photographs, but you've probably not been so conscious about it because the photograph has done all of the work for you. And I am explaining all of this to you assuming that you don't have any understanding of perspective, and so I suppose an easier way for me to try and get this across is to say that when you look at something in life, your eyes are lenses and you are capturing what you see, just like when a camera takes a photograph. except we're a bit more limited compared to a camera. If we want to recreate what is in front of us in a drawing, then we need to go through this process of creating that space through the use of perspective. And we observe all of this when we are looking at something. And then of course, if you are drawing from life and you are rendering the drawing, then you have realistic conditions to account for. The environment is always changing. But because of that, we are able to obtain a better idea of how things appear in reality. And if your intention is to create a drawing that is realistically convincing, then you will benefit from that. So there are these skills which are involved in drawing, which are often informed by an underlying knowledge. Perspective for creating realistic space, anatomy for drawing the human figure. There's a lot of fundamentals which play a part, and we will discuss all of these more in depth as we get into talking about drawing from the imagination in the next video. But I think I've pretty much covered drawing from observation, and so if you was wondering what you should know in order to create drawings like this, then hopefully this has clarified a lot of that for you. So if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and subscribe with the notifications on to keep up to date with all of the content that I put out there, including the second part to this video where I will talk about drawing from the imagination. Also, I've got a green screen here now so that I can do stuff with the wall. But yeah, that's everything from me today. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.